everybody again. My name is Jessica Rowland. I'm the Senior Inclusion Specialist at the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers based in New York. And I'm so glad to welcome everybody to this iDove focused event. iDove, for those who aren't familiar, is the Interfaith Dialogue on Violent Extremism. It was a project that was jointly launched by the African Union Commission through the Citizens and Diaspora Directorate, and GIZ, which is the German office commissioned by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. And this started in 2017. And since its inception, the project has been able to establish a network of young peacemakers from around the world, all who are working to prevent or counter violent extremism. iDove provides a youth-led platform to have dialogue and foster creative approaches to preventing and countering violent extremism, drawing on the soft power of religion. So we call the youth in this program iDovers. So you'll hear iDovers a lot. So today, you're going to hear from 4 teams of iDovers who in the last year have been implementing small grant projects that were focused in responding to gender and radicalization in preventing violent extremism. So, this week, starting tomorrow, you have the Youth Summit of the Future Forum. So we wanted to really kick that off in the youth leadership spirit. So you're going to hear the key findings from these different iDove projects. And we'll have a Q&A for you to ask them some questions about their findings. They're in the very end of implementation. So maybe you'll also be able to still give them some good ideas as they wrap up. So that'll be the first half of the meeting. And then the second half is actually going to provide a workshop space to do a training to build the different skills of all of you working in the area to prevent or counter violent extremism and to advance peace and gender equality. So it's going to be focused on that gender transformative approach in implementing, preventing, and countering violent extremism projects. So without further ado, I want to introduce our facilitator, Dallin van Leuven, who has a lot of experience in this area doing PCVE and gender, and has worked for Search for Common Ground and a lot of different UN agencies developing tools for them. But most importantly, he was our iDove coordinator and has been mentoring and coaching these iDove projects this year. So I'm going to turn it over.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you everyone for attending this workshop / discussion. I'm actually really excited to have been able to work with such amazing iDovers, such as these 4 here. They're each representative of larger teams who've all been working together collaboratively on these kinds of projects. And the only thing I would say is just that they have really listened to the needs in their communities, which was the incentive for them or the impetus for them to design these projects that they will be discussing with us today. We might not have too much time to go into all the details of their projects, but I think in the sense of this workshop and what we want to achieve, I think it would be great to focus on a few of these questions that are relevant to the topic at hand. So I would like to introduce first Imran Al-Haji Buba, who is the founder of the Youth Initiative Against Terrorism. He and his team in northern Nigeria and Yobe State have been working on this topic, and I would like to ask him to come to the floor with me and answer a few of these questions that we'd like to discuss with him. So Imran, it's a great pleasure to always see you, but it's been an absolute pleasure working with you. And so I just wanted to maybe ask a little bit about your project, and if you could just explain to us what that project focused on and how it really sought to address the impacts of terrorism in Yobe State. We'll just go ahead and get started with that.
Okay, thank you so much, Dallin. So just to give context, we work in northeastern Nigeria, and northeastern Nigeria is one of the regions that continue to suffer like Boko Haram violence. Boko Haram is a jihadi rebel group that started fighting since 2009 to establish what they call their own Sharia state, where they implement full Sharia law, but the region already has a kind of Sharia law in existence already, but they challenge and they want to change the system. So since 2009, the insurgency has been ongoing. And because the region is also very like conservative Muslim communities, everything, there are a lot of patriarchal culture, like in terms of non-inclusion of women in peace and conflict. So the focus of our project is to encourage the participation of women in peace and security interventions, like to counter violent extremism in the region, as well as to address other conflict issues like communal conflict, domestic violence, and many other related issues. So we empower 30 young women, which we selected through competitive process, and we give them trainings, tools, and also support to implement community project in their communities to address issues they identified as preventing women participation in the region. Thank you so much.
Let's hone in a little bit on what you mean by mentoring and capacity building. So in your project, you wanted to provide capacity building, mentorship, networking for these young women in order to build their skills in preventing and countering violent extremism, specifically in their communities, right? So you've talked to us about in the past that during your community dialogues, especially those with mixed genders, that women would often maybe self-censor in the sense that they would not speak up when they had the chance or the floor was open, and that they would maybe not share their thoughts as openly when they were in these mixed gendered environments, when they were, there in front of the men that were also in attendance. So how did you go about to build trust and address this issue, sort of to ensure that young women and women had their thoughts and their feelings heard in these kinds of events and frameworks?
Yeah, yeah. So this is one of the issues that we try to build their capacity to be able to talk like with people from like different genders. So part of the capacity building trainings, we deliver three trainings. The first one focus on women, peace and security, more of broadly for them to understand why it's even important to include women. And then the two other trainings, we focus specifically on the skills that we feel will be relevant to do that. So the first one, we talk about grassroots advocacy, how they can go to communities to advocate, engage with diverse groups, do a local like stakeholder mapping, how to engage in relationship. Then the final training, we focus on communication, especially like how to communicate with people from different groups like with different characteristics. So in that regard, they try like to learn to talk to other genders, and we can see a lot of improvement in some of their community projects. Like they conducted advocacy visit to district head, which is like very a kind of male-dominated space, like in all the palace, like where they meet those district head, like they are all male-dominated spaces, and you see women talking, explaining their project ideas, calling the officials to support them. So we see a lot of improvement. And in their report they submit after they implement their community project, they highlighted this kind of improvement. They mentioned sometimes they find it difficult like to talk, and sometimes their voice is not clear, but with all the trainings, with all the tools provided, they were able to communicate more effectively, and they feel like the stakeholders understand their messages better.
I'm so happy to hear that. And it's been great to see the kind of community engagement that the young women have been doing in their communities. So one final question, and I assure everyone here that might look that way, but we are not in the same room. Imran and I, we have the same background here. But Imran, during your conflict resolution trainings, let's narrow in on that one. You made the decision to let the fellows, these young women themselves, facilitate the discussions to really, I think as you described, it was to create a sense of ownership in the activity.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
why and why was that important for your activity though?
yeah, I feel like sometimes we tend to believe we have expert, we have facilitators with like knowledge, everything, but sometimes the participant understand the context better. They know what work well and what. So we encourage like the facilitators to use their theoretical knowledge, to use their expertise from other region, like even from the region. Some of the facilitators are from the region. We encourage them to allow the participant to bring their ideas, because they come from different communities within Yobe State. So they come from all the 17 local government areas, different communities. So through those like group discussions, they were able to share different examples. They challenge each other's ideas. They co-create ideas together. So we find it like a kind of more effective way to facilitate. And sometimes the facilitators also mention they actually learn from the participant. Like it's not only like the facilitators teaching them, they feel also they learn from the participant. When the participant have this kind of group discussions and they share like the outcome of the discussions, they find some of the conclusions very insightful for them. Like they think this is something that there is a lot of nuance in their discussion. So we encourage like other people, if they want to design a similar project, to have this kind of participatory approach. Ask the participant questions before you design the training curriculum, the presentations, everything. But also during the trainings, allow the participant to also engage in conversations, to discuss ideas and share with the wider group.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. I think we're going to come back to a Q&A here towards the end of the hour, but I just wanted to thank you for sharing those thoughts, and we'll definitely go into more detail in the Q&A. I'd like to invite Mary Mwachiti from Kenya, who is the founder and executive director of Nawiri community-based organization, to join me here on the floor.
Hi, Darlene. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you so much, Darlene. I'm here. Sorry for joining late. I'm experiencing some technical hitches, so also I want to be able to open my camera.
I want you to, just like Imrana, to maybe tell us a little bit about the project and what it focused on and how you and your team work to address the impacts of extremism in your particular corner of Kenya.
Thank you so much, Darlene, for that question. First of all, our project's name is Promoting Gender Inclusivity and Religious Harmony. And we're doing this project in Kinango sub-county, Kwale County in Kenya. That's the coastal part of Kenya. And our overall goal is to enhance community resilience to violent extremism in the community. So the project focused on preventing violent extremism and building resilience within communities. And it also provides alternative messaging that promotes social cohesion and ultimately reduce radicalization in the community. And all these were being realized through several activities that we've been doing, which the first one was the stakeholders meeting, which was the inception meeting for the project, where there was a representation of everyone in the community from both state and non-state actors, including the religious leaders, traditional leaders, the persons living with disability, the sexual minorities, women, girls, boys, and men in the community. And this was simply because to make sure that everyone in the community, they're being involved in the peace processes, and they get to understand what exactly the project is about, to also get the buy-in from the local leaders for us to avoid doing more harm in our community. Then after that, we did a TOT training for our peace champions in the community. This involved 20 peace champions who were carefully selected from the different areas of Kinango sub-county. And in this training, they were taken through several topics. And this was simply because we did not want the champions to just stay with the knowledge, but also after the training, they're supposed to cascade it down to the communities. And after the training that we did with the 20 champions, we gave them a platform where they could cascade the knowledge down. And this is through the community barazas. So every ward in the sub-county, the TOTs were leading the community barazas, and they were addressing the main issue in their areas that contribute to violent extremism in the sub-county. Yes, and also we're doing the social media campaigns through Facebook and Express. And this is because these are the platforms that are being used mostly in the sub-county. And this is to provide the alternative messaging online. And currently, we're working towards having the interreligious dialogue workshop that hopefully we're going to do it next month. And this will bring about all the religious leaders in our community. And we'll do it's going to be a 1 week workshop. And after that, we're going to do the project closure event. Thank you.
Excellent. So I really I would just, you know, in order to summarize, you know, the fact that there was a very localized approach, that while you did have these sort of county level or even more events and trainings, but they were sort of contextualized or localized thanks to the peace champions that you were working with, right? So
yeah.
But I think as you've described to us, one of the things that you wanted to focus on throughout was on shaping positive masculinities in the communities. So what does this mean to you? And then I guess, how did you engage young men and young women and engage men as well in this topic? And what might be some key lessons that you've learned from this kind of engagement with men and young men?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that, Darlene. And shaping positive masculinity was one of the major objectives in this project. And it basically means involving activities that redefine traditional gender roles that promote respect, empathy, and nonviolence in the community. So we engaged both men and young men in different setups. For example, we had the community barazas and also peer-to-peer mentoring on gender equality and violence prevention through champions that were trained under the TOT training that we did previously. So we managed to get male champions who actually are championing for positive masculinity in the community. And we also collaborated with the religious leaders and community leaders to aid in shifting the harmful masculinity norms in the community. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for that. I appreciate that. So, Mary, throughout the implementation of this project, you've sort of talked to us about this need to make sure that you're creating safe spaces. So what does that mean by a safe space, and why do you think it's important, and what maybe concrete steps would you recommend for others to take in order to sort of implement or create their own safe spaces in their work?
So a safe space means a space that is non-judgmental, a space where participants feel comfortable in expressing themselves without the fear of either stigma, retaliation, or any harm of any sense. And it is very important for us to have these spaces, otherwise we'll not be able to realize our goals. The steps that we took as a team to make sure that we have these spaces is that we ensure that we have gender-sensitive facilitators. For example, we were doing the TOT training, and I have colleagues that I've partnered with from iDove, that is Isa and Regina, they're both iDovers, and they were part of the facilitators. And it was important for me, or for the team, the Nawiri team, to make sure we pick facilitators who are gender sensitive, because the participants come from different backgrounds. They come from diverse backgrounds, different traditions, different beliefs and religions. So if you do not have a facilitator who is sensitive, then you're going to create more harm. You know, another step that we took is we established ground rules for respectful communication and confidentiality amongst us, the facilitators, the trainers, the implementers of the project, the community, and the champions that we had trained, the peace champions in the community. And we also created a physical and emotional safety by involving community leaders and religious leaders to endorse and participate in these activities from the inception to the end of the project. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a very comprehensive answer, but it also, I think, is reflective of the fact that you and your team have really made a do no harm approach a central element of your project, and I think everybody involved really has appreciated that. And I'm not just saying from our side, but from the participants as well. So thank you very much for sharing all of these great insights, and we will definitely dive into more, I'm sure, in the Q&A.
Thank you.
Thanks again. So I would like to, if given the time, to move to Justin Mukonanyana, who is the Executive Director for the Center for Human Rights and Governance, SOLAS. And so, Justin, I'm hoping that we've got a great connection. I've struggled with my own today. So I'm hoping that we can have a great conversation about your project. So I'd invite you to join me here on the floor.
Thank you, Darlene.
Hi.
Hi.
It's great to have you here. So just like with Imrana and Mary, if you could just talk to us, Justin, about sort of your project, but also maybe we could start with the gender analysis that you and your team have done. In there, you kind of wrote about how the issues of gender inequality and gender-based violence and just to be clear, we're talking about Goma and that area in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. So you wrote that gender inequality and gender-based violence, including sexual gender-based violence, was inextricably linked as a means and a consequence of violent extremism in that particular context. So can you share us more about your project and sort of elaborate on what you mean by this link here that you've sort of identified through your research?
Okay, thank you, Darlene. The project name is Ushirika Gender Transformative Project, which is located, as we have said, in North Kivu province, which is one of the war-torn province in the Eastern DRC, and has the overall goal of reduced violent extremism, gender-based violence and prejudices, and customary practice directed against women in targeted communities. So the project has mainly 3 activities. One is training on peace building and PVE. And the second is 2 sessions on improving social and economic gender status. And the last one was 2 sessions on advocacy and prevention of SGBVs. So as you have just said, to explain how gender inequality and GBV are means and consequence of violent extremism, we found that extremist groups exploit gender power imbalances to assert control over community and girls, often seen as vulnerable, and become specific target for violence, including social violence and tactic to intimidate, fracture, and destabilize societies to make their demands understood. So this serves not only to subjugate women, but also to undermine community resilience and cohesion. So the linkage between GBV and extremism, we found that is cyclical. Violent extremism worsen gender inequality by enforcing harmful gender norms, which positions women as second-class citizens with limited rights and opportunities. And the marginalization makes it easier for extremist ideology to take root, as they thrive in environments where inequality and inequity and oppression are prevalent. Moreover, GBV is used as a weapon of war, further to disempower women and fueling cycle of violence. So the project recognizes this interconnection and aims to tackle both the cause and effect of this cycle by empowering communities through education, economic opportunities, and leadership role. So we are challenging the very structure that extremists exploit. In a nutshell, that's what I say about the linkage between gender equality and SGBVs.
I really appreciate that. In fact, just as you were speaking, you sort of highlighted on what's in UN Security Council Resolution 2242, which recognizes the use of sexual and gender-based violence as a tactic of terrorism, and it specifically to do the very things that you're pointing out there. So I think you've really highlighted a very localized example of something that we know that's happening on a global scale, with specific violent extremist groups in different areas of the world. So I appreciate those insights, and I'm glad that we can link it or sort of provide an example of something that's unfortunately a global issue. So Justin, you've talked to us about the importance of proactive stakeholder engagement and really the need to obtain some buy-in for your activities, especially those that are sort of women-led peace networks and religious leaders. So why did you decide to use this approach, and how would you say that it's helped in the outcomes of your project?
So we think that using proactive stakeholders engagement is crucial because community trust and the collaboration are key to the success of any project, particularly in sensitive areas like gender equality and peace building. So we engage women-led peace networks and the religious leaders because they hold significant influence in local communities and can advocate for change from within. Women-led networks are very vital for promoting gender-sensitive approaches, while religious leaders can help shift cultural norms and support peace initiatives. So this approach improved our project outcome by fostering trust, increasing local ownership, and ensuring that our interventions were culturally relevant. In addition, this approach helped reaching a large number of community members, which factor was absolutely challenging due to issues like geographical barriers, insecurity, and deep-seated societal norms. Many communities are isolated or difficult to access due to poor infrastructure or ongoing conflict. SARS was limiting our ability to scale up our activities. So we find that by engaging proactive stakeholders, that would remove traditional gender norms that used to hinder women's participation in public initiative, and in the continuous engagement and sensitization effort brought success, which would brought success to the implementation of this project. I think that's why we have used this proactive stakeholders engagement.
Well, Justin, I really appreciate that. I think those are very keen insights. I think something that you talked about as well is sort of, and this is reflected in the other iDove teams, but you've used this training of trainers style approach with the participants that you've been working with. So maybe you can elaborate for us why you chose to use this approach, and what maybe are some of the best practices or lessons learned that you would like to share with us.
Okay, so we use the training of trainers approach because it is an effective way to scale up capacity building effort in a challenging environment where the direct access to all communities is limited. By training local, then we selected the local leaders, educators, and the community members who created a network of trainers who could expand our reach into remote or insecure area, ensuring the sustainability of the project even after our direct involvement ended. So because we have a large area that we cannot cover within the time frame of the project, so we use this approach to reach more beneficiaries in many different territories. So this best practice from this approach included selecting participants who have strong community ties and who are respected locally, as this builds trust and encourage wide participation. And that's additionally ensuring the trainers are well equipped with culturally relevant materials and skills to adapt the training to different local contexts was very key to this project. We also incorporated ongoing support and mentorship for trainers to address any challenge they faced in the communities. So, you know, we use this approach in nutshell because we have a large area. You know, Congo is a big country, DRC, and to reach each and every area was difficult for us. And we use this approach to make sure that many people has participated and many areas has been reached.
Excellent. I appreciate that. I think the choices or the reflections that you've had on why to make that choice is something that's reflected amongst the other teams. So I appreciate your insights here. We're going to move to our fourth iDover team, who's represented by Nasira Soumaira, who is the executive president of the African Niger Network and the executive director of the NGO Global Empowerment. She's been working with the team of the 4 projects here. This is a cross-border team. And so the team is stretched across 3 countries in the Sahel. So Nasira, I'd ask for you to join the floor and help enlighten us about your project and the unique approaches that you all have been taking. Nasira, see you on the call. See, you're still muted, unfortunately. There you are.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm having some network issues.
Welcome to our shared life here, huh? Nasira, I'm really glad that you're able to represent your team. So if you could just simply sort of tell us about what your project focused on, the geographical areas that you were working in, and how you sought to address the impacts of terrorism in your area. I think we'll just get started with that.
So, yeah. Okay, so I would just do a highlight on our activities. As I said, my English is not very well, so I'm going slowly so that you can understand. So our project is a project empowering youth in Litako on gender transformative action to overcome gender norms that hinder women's role in PBA, and aims to contribute to challenging the norms that marginalize women's contribution to PBA efforts and peace building and promote women participation in PBE and peace building in the region of Litako. So the region of Litako is like Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. So the first activity we have made is a training with all youth, some youth from Mali, Burkina Faso, and some areas of Niger that have facing some act of terrorism. Okay, so it's to have a workshop with all. They have been trained to organize workshops for women and young girls to raise awareness about the importance of women's role in inclusion PBA and challenge gender norms that hinder the rights and inclusion in PBA, and how to make some community dialogues on gender equality. As you know, our country, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, we have some I don't know how to explain it, but people are really, really, really have some resistance about women's implications in prevention of extremism violence. So in some people's head, it's like a job or kind of activity who is only for men. So how to make them change their mind and how to make them work with women to go about this activity. So After this, we have some initiative that have been made by participants of the training. So when they get back to the countries, they have some all group of youth have their own initiative. So we have Tilaberi, who is in Niger. It's an area in Niger who's facing terrorism acts. We have also Tera. We have also Burkina Faso, and we have also Mali. Yes. So they have all made some initiatives and to share and highlight how women can work on peace, preventing extremism, violence in their country, and what will be women contributions in fighting extremism. So in Tilaberi, they organized a campaign of sensitization on to promote women's participation on the prevention of violent extremism. Actually, Tilaberi is the area of Niger who is facing a lot of attacks of terrorists every day and every month. We have a lot of people who died from those attacks. So they have really faced a big issue to make this initiative, but they made it because in the area they work with the religious, with youth, the community leader to create an inclusive environment when we can actively implicated women in security and peace initiatives. So it has been the same with Kira, a team also. They have also made an initiative with some interactive discussion led by experts, and the sessions raised awareness about the importance of women's involvement in decision making for preventing violent extremism also. And it has been the same with the initiative of Burkina Faso, but in the area of Dori. Yes, but for Dori, it has been more successful than other country because it have including more women than men, and they have been sensitized also how local women can be, how local about the importance of their involvement in the fights against extremism, and create also that foster active female participation in security and peace initiatives. And for the last ones have been made in Mali. Gao is also an area has faced many acts of terrorism, and the last initiative is in Gao in Mali, also on the same
We can hear.
Yeah, we're having some, I think you're coming out pretty clear, but it's maybe just a little bit faint. So could I kindly ask you, Nasira, just to speak a little bit more loudly? But you've highlighted something that I'd like to delve into a little bit more, if I may. So you talked about making sure that women and young women are able to be involved and included and even leaders in preventing violent extremism in their communities. You also, however, chose to include both young men and young women as well as part of your initial work. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that. But then let's dive in a little bit more into sort of the gender analysis that you all were doing as part of the development of your project. You've talked about some of these barriers for women and young women's participation in PVE. So could we maybe go into a little bit more detail about what sort of social norms regarding perhaps women's agency? Maybe there's discriminatory laws, or maybe there are issues about economic empowerment. Maybe if we can talk a little bit more about these challenges or these imbalances, we can understand how your project and the people that you worked with through their local projects were able to address these imbalances.
Okay. So yes, about the barriers, as I said, here in Niger and maybe in some areas in the region of the Tapo, women are not really implicated on peace building efforts. So they have been considered like it's not their main role to talk about peace. It is men's role. So we just want to change their minds and also want to change their perceptions. So yes, when in an area when we have some terrorist attacks, the decisions are all made by men instead of taking also women's I don't know, their mind to know what they really wanted on the area. And also, maybe the big problem is much more economics, because women activities that can have economics or financials are only proposed or made by men. So when it's come to a woman, her main role is to stay at home, taking care of the family. And sometimes when they have an attack, the men of the family died in this attack, women are reduced to, I don't know, to find some issues, to take care of their families, even if to join those groups of terrorists, or to, I don't know, to sell to them some stuffs just to have some financial. But if we go in front of those women, help them have an activity, make them more make them more financial and economic issues. I think things can change over the time. And also now, with our activities, with the awareness and the sensation in some villages, we have changed people's minds to have some, to be more inclusive with women. So yeah, just change. Things are changing, but I think things will change maybe slowly. But actually, with our awareness, with our activities, and we are also trying to find some project that can help women to have economic activities in those areas, so that they can be really powerful, and so that they can also contribute to peace building efforts in their area. As I said, my English is not really good, but I'm trying to do my best. So that is it.
C'est formidable, huh? You're doing great. I think, I mean, unfortunately, the region that you're working with is the epicenter of the threat of violent extremism in the world. And unfortunately, there's a lot of work ahead. As you've been talking about, to try and change social norms, I think already, unfortunately, conflict and violent extremism already has an effect on changing the environment. You've talked about the loss of partners, the fact that women have to find other ways to provide for their families, you've got a lot of work ahead of you. I think we all have a lot of work ahead of us. So if we can just look to the future, how is it, Nasira, that you plan to stay engaged in these communities? Of course, it's across these 3 different countries. So how are you planning to stay engaged on PVE within these communities after the project concludes?
Okay, so the first thing is to stay in touch with those young people that we have trained and that are making really, really efforts and many amazing things in their communities. It is also maybe to have some projects who can empower women financially and economically. So also to find a way to have some discussions maybe once a month or once on 2 weeks to discuss with them to hear what's our problem, what have been positive, how can we help you, and which kind of help do you want from us. So the main thing is really to stay in touch with them, to help them, and if they have any problem, that we can be the first person that they will come to and talk about the problem, and so that we can find some solutions together. And we will also continue our training with others men, others young, because these ones have been really trained. Maybe we can also have some focus group that we can help with, and have a lot of young and women that we can change their mind positively and can continue the work even if when we will not be doing they can continue the work themselves with our help. And yes, we aim to support all the initiative, the local initiative also, to support them, to help them, and to continue working with them on their own initiative. There are not the initiative of our NGO or our initiative, but we aim to see those young people having their own initiative in peace building efforts.
I really appreciate that answer, Nasira, because especially because of how you started the answer, is we're going to keep listening. And I think that was a great insight. I think as long, so many people, as we are implementing that's an important lesson for us, to just make sure that we're still listening to the communities that we're trying to serve. And I really appreciate that particular insight. So thank you very much. Your English is impeccable. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And I think everybody here in the chat said the same. So we really appreciate these great insights. And we have about 9 minutes for a Q&A. So I would just invite everyone who has a question for these iDovers to raise your hand. We can monitor the chat here if you'd like to submit a text-based question. So we can take these now 8 minutes to address any kinds of insights or questions or concerns that has been raised by this discussion.
Thank you, Diane. I will just put off my mic, and if anyone has a question for me, just make it on the chat box, because I have another meeting there. Yes, but I will try to answer to the messages in the chat. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nasira. So I don't see any. I do see one hand raised by Jessica. Take the prerogative and go ahead.
Yeah, if no one's got a question, I've got one. This is for any of our iDover speakers. I don't know why this just came to me, but out of everything that you've implemented and done in this project, is there anything that you would have done differently having learned something along the way? Is there something that maybe you didn't expect or didn't anticipate, and you would think to do differently or better next time?
Let's take one more question. I see Nenkeng Golopui. If you could go ahead and unmute yourself and jump on and ask your question. Mr. Nkeng? Oh, now the questions are coming. Great. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, we can ask Hayatu Ashafa, if you would like to ask a question.
Okay, thank you, darling. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Please go right ahead.
Okay, I actually asked question for Imrana Buba. I think he is the first speaker. Yeah, I haven't heard from him. They have done a lot of important and very impactful projects in the northern part of Nigeria, where I also reside. And I've been working from Interfaith Mediation Center, where we also had a project which has to do with countering violent extremism in the northern part of Nigeria too. The question I want to ask him is that do they look at the aspect of faith, religion aspect of faith in their program or in their project that has to do with violent extremism? Because I heard him talking about the capacity building training for women and the participation of women and youth. I want to ask Imran, are you also looking at the faith-based approach to counter violent extremism from your work? That's the question.
Okay, it's a great question. So let's take those two, and I'd invite the iDovers to jump in as you feel free to. So two questions. What might you have done differently? I will draw on another question from the chat. What success stories are you proud of in all of your actions? That's from Emmanuel Wakana. And then finally, what about the role of religion, and how are you looking at and incorporating religion into your projects? Imrana, I think you're ready to go.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I will start the one with Hayatu. Yeah, I am familiar with IMC, and somehow like I know Imam pastor, like they were like in Damatur, I think 2016. They facilitated 1 hour interfaith project funded by USAID. So I'm so familiar with the work of IMC, and we incorporate interfaith approach a lot in our work. So for this project, also we consider the religious background of the participants. So in the selection process, in the application form, as well as the nomination from those that could not fill the form online, especially those from rural areas, we consider the faith of the participant. We consider like people from Muslim and Christian background, but also diverse like a sect within the religious groups as well. And that helped a lot with the interaction with the participant. I remember like in one of the first training, someone mentioned like them working together with people of different faith. To her, it means a lot. Like it helps to have that kind of bonding that she don't experience before. Yeah, and I feel this has a lot to do to also counter like violent extremism, like the one we have in Nigeria, because they use a lot of religious symbols. They portray it as this is us against them. This is about jihad, but like bringing people that come from Muslim, like explaining that it will give the non-Muslim audience like better understanding of the thing. And people that also think that this is religious thing can have like different perception and counter it. So it's very helpful. I think I will allow the other participant to answer the other questions. Thank you so much.
Okay. Imran?
Hi, Hadu.
Yeah, so I you know why I asked the question is that just December we just finished a project with USAID on what one of the component has to do with violent extremism, and one of the approach IMC use is to identify the early stage of the violent extremism in our institution. When I say institution, I mean the non-formal Islamic education. We're talking about the Al-Majiri school, Al-Lo, and local Islamia in school, where we believed, based on the statistic, that most of those youth engaged in violent extremism are recruited from those schools. If you look at the history of the Muhammad Yusuf, the leader of Boko Haram, he started as an Islamic teacher, and he started quoting the Quran and the Hadith to suit his own one. So that's that's what I'm trying to understand from your own aspect of. Do you also work directly with those institutions where we believe that 80 to 85% of those extremists came from that?
Thank you so much, Hayatu. I don't want to go a lot in the detail, because the focus of this project is not directly like us working with people at the risks of joining Boko Haram. We are more of empowering people to go to counter the messages, especially from the gender angle. So we are empowering women. So we don't go to bring Al-Majri or people that we think are vulnerable to reach them directly. But also like those statistics, especially those studies, there is a lot of also very critical, like there's a lot of criticism that sometimes in the early period, there is this recruitment of Al-Majris, but over time, Boko Haram no longer target Al-Majris. So the ideologues, the people that you mentioned, like Mohammed Yusuf Sheikau, they recruited those people with religious education. But over time, they abandoned that. They picked like random, like thieves, criminals, because they feel like they perpetrate the violence more. So there are some studies that I think you can read where they try to exonerate those Al-Majris, because that also securitized them a lot of like intelligence work to like profile Al-Majris, which we know they are very vulnerable people. So I think that idea that we know Al-Majris in the early period joined, but now to think like we need to focus all our effort on Al-Majris. I think Al-Majris, we need to do a lot of work on them, but to me, it's not from the angle of only as recruitment pool for Boko Haram. But we can talk about that, like maybe we can exchange contact and talk about that.
We exchange contact and we'll discuss further.
I will put my email in the chat. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So Justin or Mary, would you like to address either of those questions about what you might have done differently, about what sort of impacts or successes you're most proud of, and the role of religion in your projects?
Yeah, I will go next. I'll start with one of the success stories that we have in our project. And this is, for example, you see in the area, our project area, it is very rich in culture and traditions, and which most of them are very extreme. And through the efforts that we have in, building social cohesion and preventing violent extremism, one of the things that has come out strongly that we're proud of is that the perpetrators, of course, most of them are men, like 90%, they have agreed to come down and analyze and take out all the practices that actually create harm and create harm and violence against women and girls and young boys, so that they can be dropped. So that is one of the things that we are proud of, because it is coming from the community itself. It's coming from our leaders, our traditional leaders, that they feel it's about time that we need to drop all these beliefs that actually create room for violence. There's another question in the comment where someone asked about how do we get the young women and men that we involve to stay true to their cause and keep them motivated. For example, we did the TOT training for the 20 champions in the community, but we did not leave them at that with the knowledge. we made sure that we create a platform for them to cascade the same knowledge to the grassroots, deeper into the roots in the community. So by that, they are actively engaged in building peace in the community. And apart from that, we have other programs in the organization where we link them with other organizations or institutions for those who are out of school to join back to school, and for job opportunities and many more, for basically for economical empowerment, because at the end of the day, we're looking at sustainable solutions that will keep the community out of, violence. Thank you. I think I'll address those two.
Okay, just to give Justin an opportunity, if you'd like to jump in on that question. Otherwise, I believe that everyone, we do have a lot of questions. We do have another hour for this workshop. So I'm going to ask our iDovers to address questions in the chat. I'll also be monitoring the chat as well. You'll also have to forgive me for not giving a thorough introduction of each of the 4 iDovers, but one thing that I'll be doing is I'll be putting their bios into the chat as well. And so you can learn a little bit more about each of the iDovers there, which was, of course, part of the initial materials to invite you to attend this training. But Justin, I see you're unmuted, so I'd invite you to address the questions that you wanted to address, and then we'll probably have to ask everyone to address additional questions in the chat, if that's okay.
Thank you, Darlene. I think that something that we have done differently is introducing TOT approach. So that make me learn that there is a permanent need to be flexible, as some communities requires longer engagement periods due to resistance to new ideas, particularly around gender issues. So I think if we didn't use local trainers to train others, I wouldn't learn that this was very relevant. Moreover, I learned that simplifying the training material and making them more accessible to diverse literacy levels helped in delivering messages more effectively across various communities. Recently, I was chatting with some of the beneficiaries, women, and what they have been doing. We introduced something called evening dialogue around gender inequalities and PVE. So one told us that they have been living under the burden of silence for too long. That was a woman, and that now they know that the change is possible. That was a crucial and important message to the project, and that showcased the success of the project. Another told us that for the years they thought they had no voice in these matters, in projects, in dialogues on PVE, inequalities, harmful practice. But this project has empowered them to take control of their lives, lives, and fight against the violence that has held them back. So that's something that I've learned you, and they have also told us that now they can organize as women, organize the dialogue on PVE, on gender inequalities, and to challenge harmful practice against them. So that's something that was very crucial, and they're also able to teach others how to do that or how to get involved in those activities. So that are some success stories and something that I have learned differently.